And finally, 46 years ago today, the American League adopts designated hitting rule. 1973, the owners of the America's 24 Major League Baseball teams vote to allow teams in the American League AL to use a designated pinch hitter that could bat for the pitcher while still allowing the pitcher to stay in the game. The idea of adding a 10th man to the baseball lineup to a bat for the pitcher had been suggested as early as 1906 by revered player and manager Connie Mack. In 1928, John Hedler, then president of the National League (NL), revived the issue, but the rule was rejected at the point of the AL management. By the early 1970s, Charlie Finley, the colorful owner of the Oakland A's, had become the designated hitter rule's most outspoken advocate, arguing that the pinch hitter to replace the pitcher, a player that usually batted poorly, exceptions like legendary Babe Ruth, notwithstanding, would add an extra offensive punch that baseball needed to draw more fans. At a joint meeting of the two major leagues in Chicago on January 11, 1973, presided over a baseball commissioner, Bowie Kuhn, the owners voted to allow the AL, which lagged behind the NL in both scoring and attendance, to put the designated hitter rule into practice. The NL resisted the change, and for the first time in history, the two leagues would play using different rules. In addition, the introduction of the designated hitter rule, 16.10, marked the biggest rule change in Major League Baseball history since 1903. When it was decided that foul balls would be considered strikes, though it was initially began as a 3-year experiment, it would permanently be adopted by the AL and later by most amateur and minor league teams. On April 6, 1973, opening day, Ron Blomberg of the New York Yankees became the league's first ever designated hitter in his first place appearance. He was walked on a full count by the Boston Red Sox pitcher Louis Tiant. From the beginning, baseball purists described the designated hitter in the bitter ruralist terms, arguing that it took away from baseball's integrity. The rift between pro and anti-designated hitter fans had continues into the present day. At the first, the designated hitter rule did not apply to any games in the World Series, in which the AL and NL winners met for the World Championship from 1976 and 1985. It applied to only series held in even-numbered years, and in 1986, the current rule took effect, according to which designated hitter rule is used or not used according to the practice of the home team.
That's a beautiful thing, right? Let me tell you something. And when it comes down to baseball, Americans' pastime, if you will, it used to be Americans' pastime, the greatest, purest game left. I know you guys hear me say that all the time, but it was at one point, it was the game of all games here in America. Like I said, you go in the old days. I'm not saying I live in the old days, but I like to talk about the old days because I like that, man. I love history, man. I'm a historian at heart. I say that as well. But, you know, the old days, the old stadium is a Wrigley Field and, you know, Yankee Stadium and, you know, the old Polo Grounds. And let's not forget Fenway Park, of course. And you always have those great, because people talk about the eras before the designated hitter, you know, you get the great Mickey Mantle and Joe DiMaggio and Ted Williams, who was possibly known as the greatest hitter of all time, you know, and it's tradition when it comes down to baseball. It's all time tradition, you know, and I kind of sometimes as a conservative, you kind of feel that sometimes, you know, it's like, yeah, I don't like change. But you always know change is coming and change is not always bad. Change can be good. But baseball is one of these sports in this day and age that doesn't really like to go with the change. They still have rules that are implicated hundreds years ago, about 100 years ago in some sense, you know what I mean? And they go by these rules. So when you see something that changes, like the designated, which I wasn't around for, like I said, I'm pretty young for that, and which I'm a Yankee fan, being from New York, and I always took that as an advantage. I liked it, that rule. Like, yeah, DH and shit. You put a 10th hitter in there, a ninth hitter, really, essentially, you know what I mean? And it was always good. You could put a DH in the lineup, you know, and put them in cleanup. It doesn't matter. Some guys like Big Papi from, you know, who was like known as a DH. He was just a hitter. And these DH, like I said, these guys they didn't really play defense, you know. They just came there just to hit. And there were guys that are so good at it. And now, even to the old, like I said, tradition wise, they would say, "Oh, these DH guys, they don't belong in the Hall of Fame. They're not real ball players. We shouldn't vote them in because they're DH." So, like I said, with baseball, it's a beautiful thing when it's great, but sometimes it can be boring. There could be games where you see like literally 18 innings and your people are falling asleep in the stadiums, but there are people that are awake for the whole thing, and I love that. That's the beauty of it, though. To be honest, I love a pitching duel. I love when the game is 1-0. I love a shutout. You know, um, the old pitching days. Like I said, even to the old Negro leagues and shit. Satchel Paige was the man. You know what I mean? Nolan Ryan, absolutely. I was a Roger Clemens guy all day. He was my favorite growing up. Then you had like Mariano Rivera and shit closing, and you had Randy Johnson, Kurt Schilling. You know what I mean? Real, real pitchers. But these guys, like Kurt Schilling, for example, when he played for the Diamondbacks, and Randy Johnson, they played in the National League, so they batted. Like in the National League, obviously, the pitchers bat, and in the American League, the pitchers don't bat at all. So, in a way, it kind of gives the American League advantage for runs. But in a way, though, also what it does is it makes the pitchers, they know how to hit. So when it comes down to inevitably in the World Series, where they're going to have those rules where you play in a National League park, the pitchers is going to have to hit, and you play in American League DH. But you play in the National League, you would think that the pitcher is going to have the advantage of hitting, and that's baseball. It's all numbers. Now, I don't want to lose people here because, like I said, though, dude, it's like, oh, baseball, but baseball is a great thing, and the lineage is great. Like you mentioned, chat, fucking Babe Ruth and shit. You know what I mean? 54 streaks, Joe DiMaggio. Fucking come on, nobody still has done it to this day. Ichiro, when he was breaking boundaries and shit. Don't forget about the Griffies. You know what I mean? To me, I think sometimes, I like more of the lineage stuff, man. Like I felt like when Derek Jeter retired, I was kind of done with baseball. That was just my thing. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it's the right thing, whatever. But I didn't want to sound like a sellout either. I still love the Yankees. Don't get me wrong. But I totally love the Yankees when they had just fucking, that core four of Pettit, Bernie Williams, and Derek Jeter and shit, and Paul O'Neill and Tino Martinez and like Mariano and shit, and Jorge Posada and shit. Like I said, I don't want to get two Yankees on this shit, but the Boston was a great rivalry too. And that was the greatest rivalry in sports, they said. The Red Sox and the Yankees, man. And forget about them. They always had a great team too. They had Big Papi and fucking Manny Ramirez during the time I used to watch it. Pedro Martinez and shit. And fucking Johnny Damon. These guys won championships too, and that was horrendous for me to ever watch, especially when you see that clips of that Boston parade. But the DH thing, man, personally, people don't like it. But I think that sometimes baseball should switch up a lot of these rules. Now, I'm not trying to say let's change something. If it's not broke, don't fix it. I totally get that. I love the psychology of baseball. How I love those, when it's cold at night. And I love when the Yankees to be in the playoffs. And I love those pitching duels. And it can be nail biting. You have to be a baseball fan to really understand when it's like 2-0 and it's the bottom of the seventh. Like everybody's at the edge of the seat on every ball that is thrown. You know what I mean? That's baseball. That's the beauty of it. There is beauty in it. To this day, I don't want to sound like a hater that's saying I don't like it now, because I do. But it's just, I think that sometimes they should be a little bit more lenient when it comes down to ruling. Like, oh, you can't fucking, they have a lot of shit. Pine tar on the bat. Oh, this guy corks his bat. And like, you can't do this, you can't do that. I don't know. It's just sometimes you need to fucking stop being with the old stuff shirt and get with the times. I still believe, in my personal opinion, that the National League should have DH. I think in a way it does make it even in some sense. I think that when it comes down to like ERAs and when it comes down to pitchers and everything and batting average, what I'm saying, and every baseball fan that knows what I'm talking about right now knows that I'm making some kind of sense or not. But hey man, I think it works, to be honest. I don't mind it. I think, like I said, baseball should get with the times, but baseball, It's a great thing. It's a great game. It's a beautiful game to play. A lot of lineage, and even though it started maybe roughly, it started bad, but there's some good things. You say like, oh, there was like the dead ball era. There was times where blacks weren't allowed to play or any type of minorities, just white only. But the times changed because that's what the time was. And Jackie Robinson, who's amazing, you know what I mean, and he broke boundaries. And dude, Hank Aaron. Forget about that. Willie Mays and shit. You know what I mean? Who broke fucking boundaries and shit. Roberto Clemente will always be saluted. You know? And it's just not like I said, and everybody else, man. And everybody else that was in there and everybody that's considered the man in this day and age. Babe Ruth is the man. Joe DiMaggio, all those fucking guys. You know what I mean? Even Roger Maris, whatever the fuck. And let me tell you something about Barry Bonds and Sammy Sosa and all those guys. Like I said, and you know what I mean? Let those guys, and Canseco too, put them all in the fucking Hall of Fame. Remember Palmero was sticking his finger to the fucking government and all that shit? Put him in the Hall of Fame. Fuck all the bullshit. Mark McGuire, put them all in there because I'm telling you right now, when I was a kid, that's when I was watching this shit because I thought baseball was boring and corny. You know what I mean? I did thought that. And I was like, oh, whatever, this shit is whack. I don't watch baseball. I was always an NBA fan in football. But then I like baseball and I loved it, especially with the Yankees and shit. But then I'm saying, but those guys are the ones that made me watch it even more. And these are the guys that did like, oh, we'll never put them in the Hall of Fame. Stop being so stuffed shirt. MLB, Major League Baseball. That's my rant on that. Let's move on, chap.